This is the final battle. With you at my side, we will demolish the deep state. We will expel the warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. We will throw off the sick political class that hates our country. We will rout the fake news media, and we will liberate America from these villains once and for all.
Donald Trump will be the first felon elected president. He may well run from prison. Many are saying that the judge, Juan Merchan, will sentence Donald Trump to jail because they can't help themselves. They'll have a psychosexual, orgasmic, TDS, orange man in an orange jumpsuit fantasy realization that they can't get out of their heads. So they'll do it. I'm preparing you right now. How do we get here? How do we get here? When somebody tells you, this is just part of the process. This is the process. This is the process playing out the way it should. This is the wheels of justice turning. What Donald Trump was charged with was a bookkeeping error. Some would argue that it's not actually an error because payments to lawyers were classified as payments to lawyers. Donald Trump's bookkeeping error was brought to the DOJ. The DOJ denied to charge. The bookkeeping error case was then brought to the FEC since they said it was a federal elections violation. They declined to charge. The bookkeeping error was brought to the DA's office. The DA's office in New York, Alvin Bragg's predecessor, he denied to charge. Said there's nothing here. The statute of limitations on a bookkeeping error is 2 years in the state of New York. This payment happens in 2017. That was 6 years ago. So the statute of limitations has run out 3 times. Alvin Bragg gets elected with Soros money, and then Alvin Bragg declines to charge. It is only when Matthew Colangelo, the number 3 guy, a dirty, greasy sleazebag at the Biden Department of Justice, decides to leave his cushy pension job for some reason and go work in a dusty, dingy, backwater district attorney's office in Lower Manhattan, which a career move that nobody can make any sense of, and then work exclusively on this case. To do what? To try and upgrade a misdemeanor into a felony. Now, you'll say, Benny, isn't this Manhattan district attorney, isn't this restorative justice where every single felony is actually downgraded? Like the murderers and the people who stab and the people who rape, all those felonies are downgraded in this office? They just let all the people free. Isn't this where Lake and Riley's killer came from? The guy, all the illegal immigrants who beat up the cops, isn't this where they come from? And they're just released back onto the street? Yes, you'd be right. Alvin Bragg's office has downgraded close to 80% of the felonies to misdemeanors. 80% of the felonies that go through Alvin Bragg's office get downgraded. This, as far as we can tell, based on all available reporting, is the first misdemeanor that's been upgraded to a felony in Alvin Bragg's office. So that's how we got here. How did they upgrade that misdemeanor, that statute of limitations had run out, to a felony? Well, they did that through the attempt to prove an underlying greater crime. And what's that greater crime? We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody's been able to actually pin that down. And that's why in this trial where the judge is a Joe Biden donor and his daughter raises hundreds of millions of dollars for Democrats to put Trump in jail, presumably this is an operation to make the judge's family rich that was plotted out for years. This rigged system and operation was finally brought to fruition yesterday with a guilty verdict of Donald Trump, because the judge said you can literally pick a menu of crimes You don't even have to specify what crime you think Donald Trump committed. You can just, in your heart, if you think he's a bad guy, you can just say he's guilty of any one of these crimes. It's like a dollar menu at McDonald's. Those don't exist anymore. But either way, you just select state crime, tax statute, federal crime. And that's what they did. They browbeat, confused, and intimidated that jury pool into finding Donald Trump guilty. And those jurors found Trump guilty, partially because they're probably confused or they're seething Trump haters because this is a Biden plus 80 district. Probably just seething, rabid Trump haters. Or there are people who think Donald Trump's innocent, but could you imagine what would happen to the one juror who held out and said nothing? Could you imagine what happens to that person? Can you imagine how destroyed their life would be? They would never be able to show their face in public. They'd be doxxed and run through. They'd have to leave their home, their family. They'd probably have to leave the country because of the Marxist left. What they do to that one juror. Imagine the situation that they've been put into. So this is now the situation that we find ourselves in. You woke up today in a different country. This isn't the country that we had when you were born. This isn't the country that we had even a few years ago. This is now a country that locks up presidents not for actual crimes, because in my lifetime, there have been just a few presidents, but there have been 10 wars. There's been unconstitutional spying. There's been the drone strike killing of American citizens without a trial. There have been affairs and payments and payouts and mass murders and the evisceration, the atomization of our Constitution by presidents. But none of them are charged. Donald Trump, of course, not charged with being a Russian asset. Remember that this is what they... Remember that the institutional left told you that Donald Trump was a legitimate Russian intelligence asset and was working for Vladimir Putin. That's not what he was charged with. They said Donald Trump's an insurrectionist. That's not what he was charged with. They said that Donald Trump's a traitor to the country and cheated and stole the election. That's not what he was charged with or found guilty of. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump was found guilty of a bookkeeping record, the statute of limitations completely run out, for an NDA payment. That's it, an NDA payment. That's it. There it is. You find today a different country. So we're now a country that will charge presidential candidates for bookkeeping record violations and send them to jail. If they can do that to Trump, that means they can do it to you. No business is safe. Your business is safe. And no one is safe in states like that. States like New York, California, states where they can get away with stuff like this. You're not safe. And so they shouldn't be safe. This is my major contention this morning. And this is what I wish to, this is my message that I wish to put forward out to you, ladies and gentlemen. Because yesterday we were live for so long and it was really hard to process it in real time because so much was changing so fast. You really have to take a step back and let the weight of the moment hit you. We now live in a different country and I think the left knows it. You don't see a bunch of squeeing and celebration on the left. You actually don't. I thought there would be. I thought the cringiest, worst takes. I thought my feed would be filled with them. You don't actually see that. The left has been weirdly quiet because I think they know what's about to happen. They know that the rules have been broken forever. And they broke them. And that this is now going to mean a very different world for them. I think the ones who are at least sober-minded enough to recognize that people like me and people like you are not going to suffer this shit anymore. I think that they realize that they've awoken the sleeping giant. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I put up on X this morning. And this is going to be the battle plan into the future. Dear elected Republicans, save us your cable news tears and your strongly worded statements. Nobody gives a shit. Your feeble weakness and uselessness is the reason why this is all happening in the first place. Action is all that matters now. Want to save America? Put Joe Biden in prison. Let's start with his family, because you can't actually charge a sitting resident of the White House. Joe Biden and his family committed a bunch of crimes in red states. There are a number of red states that were the victims of the Biden crime family. Florida's a good one. You know that the Biden family, namely Jim Biden, had a Medicaid embezzlement fraud that was run exclusively out of Florida that hurt Florida hospitals and Florida seniors, that like the innocent, old and young people of Florida in this dark ruby red state were victims of the Bidens and their international embezzlement schemes and defrauding of investors. That happened here. There were criminal charges. They all got dropped. Drag Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, and the bag man for all these Biden crimes, drag Jim Biden's ass into a Trump plus 50 district now. Make sure the judge, just make sure the judge is somebody who donated to Donald Trump. And ensure that the jury pool all wear MAGA hats. I want to see it. And make Jim Biden sit in a sweaty box in some swamp in Florida and then convict his ass. They committed real crimes in this state. Where the hell are the Republicans doing that? There are Republican district attorneys and a Republican secretary of state in this dark, rock red state. Convict him. And then I want Jim Biden thrown into prison. Joe Biden can't do jack. That's a state charge, pal. Start with the families. Jim Biden spends the rest of his life locked in a swamp box with no air conditioning in the middle of the Everglades in Florida. That's how you begin. What about Texas? Anybody watching from Texas right now? You know that Hunter Biden, part of the large scheme that they were trying to do with the Chinese was to sell Texas natural gas LNG ports to the communist Chinese? That's what the Bidens did. That was the Bidens' business plan to get filthy rich. The CEFC deal, Chinese energy company conglomerate. The goal was to sell American natural gas to China. China doesn't have any gas. And so, why can't Texas charge Hunter Biden for this international scheme to defraud Americans of our natural resources? This seems like a huge deal. Start with Hunter. Open the investigation now in Texas. Now. Bring in Hunter. F these little pithy, you're going to see a Hunter Biden trial like in a few days here. F these pithy little totally rigged federal charges. Do it on a state level. Texas, do it now. That's just off the top of my head. You know that Little Rock is currently and has always been where the Clinton Foundation is headquartered? The Clinton Foundation. You're talking international, pay-for-play, money laundering, embezzlement, child trafficking. You're talking about the most heinously corrupt organization in political history, Clinton Foundation. Start the investigation today. The district attorney in Little Rock is a Trump Republican. Open the investigation today. Bill, Hillary, for the rest of their lives, should be in and out of courtrooms trying to defend or not defend the Clinton Foundation, their crimes, and then be thrown into a hot sweat box prison in Little Rock. The only way for this to end is for Democrats to feel the pain of the system they've broken. If you want to break justice and fairness in this country, then you can be the victims of that. Understand that when you loose the hounds of war, that you're liable to get bit. And that's how this ends. Or that's how it continues on forever. Because the country is now just irreparably broken. Never, ever, ever trust those who are celebrating this moment. Rid them from your friend groups. Understand that they are part of the losing side of history. They are part of the bad, corrupted, Marxist, do anything for power, destroy the systems. Marxists always use systems to gain power, and then they destroy those systems through the illegitimacy of the process. And that's what's happened here with Trump. And here's the positive side, ladies and gentlemen, as we await the president speaking. Here's the positive side, is that every single founding father in this country was a felon. They don't teach you that in school, did they? That the signing of the Declaration of Independence was a death warrant to everyone who signed it. Put the Declaration of Independence up. This was a death warrant. Every single founding father in America was a felon. Some died in prison. You know this? They don't teach you this in school, do they? Some of the founding fathers died in prison. Some were executed. Some became prisoners of war. And some died penniless because they lost everything. Persecution is the price of being a revolutionary. That it is an abject and total guarantor of revolutionary action against an evil system. Every one of these men signed their felon warrant. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the felony document. Here's your business falsification of business records document here. Every one of these men signed away their lives. This document that is preserved inside of our National Archives, that sits inside of what is a church. If you've ever been in the National Archives, like a church-like, holy, encased in marble and glass and lights, preciously preserved. This document was a felony document. Here's your falsification of business records. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the felony document of all of our founders. And we view them as what today? Heroes. Heroes of the Republic. Many died penniless. Some were executed. Some were imprisoned. All were felons for signing this document. Persecution is the guarantor of the revolutionary. You will be persecuted by the evil, tyrannical system that you stand against. But in the end, the revolutionaries win and change the world. And the people who were siding with the British Empire during the Revolutionary War, or any revolution, you want to talk Joan of Arc, you want to talk prophets throughout all of biblical history, Gandhi to MLK to Nelson Mandela. All of these people, felons, every one of them, imprisoned, every one of them, changed the world, every single one of them, became iconic, every one of them. And this is what the Democrats have loosed onto this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we win. This is how we must now address this nation. And you can trust and believe that on this program, we are going to be personally searching out and seeking out attorney generals, calling them onto this show, laying out the crimes that Democrats have committed in their jurisdictions, and asking, where the F are the charges? You weaklings. And you know what? We're going to get results. You're part of a audience here. You're part of a movement here. You're part of a salty army, Benny Brigade, Salt must flow. You're part of something bigger. We're going to change the country. We're going to force these people, they cooked a meal, and we're going to force them to eat it. Now's the time.